Okay, and let's grab the Kaplan Q Bank. Boom. Okay, let me go find you. Come on, Dean. There we go. Okay, can you see my screen?
It's coming up. I see it now.
Okay, so boom. What's the first QID?
I put it in the chat for you, but it's
Oh,
one
okay.
five.
Hold on, let
Got
me
it?
access the chat. Okay, let me cut and paste that. I'll be impressed with myself. I'm able to do that. It looks like I am. You okay? An investor purchased 220 XYZ Corporation's 6% convertible bonds for 97. Okay, so let's just go through that. I got 20 bonds here. These are convertible bonds. I paid 97% of par, 970. They mature in 20 years. The bonds are convertible into 40 shares of the common. So that's kind of nice because they told us the conversion ratio. Sometimes they don't do that. Sometimes they tell us the price. We got to get the ratio. So they're telling me each of these bonds is convertible into 40 shares. However, 3 years after the purchase, the corporation declared a 20% stock dividend when the bond was trading at 105. Who cares? So in the trust indenture is the written promises between the issuer and the trustee for the benefit of the bondholders. We say that I want my conversion terms, or the issuer agrees to adjust my conversion terms for stock dividends and stock splits. I want to be able to convert into the same proportionate ownership. So that 40 shares is going to have to be adjusted because I'm going to want 20% more shares basically. The 105 has nothing to do with it. Okay, so then 6 months later, you convert the bonds when they were trading at 104 into the stock, and you sell the common shares, which were trading at parity. Oh my goodness. Every question on the test is only worth 1 point. But man, this one should
But I
pass.
thought this would be really good one for me to
Yeah.
better understand.
Yeah. So what I
Where-
would do first is try and get a toehold in the question. And I think the easiest thing first to do, and maybe it will answer the question for me, is to figure out what is the new conversion price based on the new conversion ratio. So I think what I would have done here, a lot of ways to do math, I would have said, okay, well, if it was a 40 share conversion ratio and they pay a 15%, where's the dividend there? 20% stock dividend. I think what I would have done is figured out first how many more shares am I going to get? And so I say, okay, if I'm going to have this is called the anti-dilution clause. And it looks like if I take my calculator, by the way, I'm not being facetious. Somebody offers me a calculator. I say thank you very much because I'm arithmetically challenged. So 40 times 20%, I get 8 shares, right? So 8 shares plus the 40. So I'm telling the issuer, listen, I want the same proportions. So if you're going to hand out 20% more stock to all the owners, you got to adjust my conversion terms as well. So that's 40 plus the new 8. So the new conversion ratio is 48 shares. Okay, now they're saying what I'm looking at is the new conversion price. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take par and I'm going to divide by my new conversion ratio. And hopefully, now the reason I'm doing this is because I'm lazy. And what I mean by being lazy is I see that all of the conversion prices are different numbers. And so I may not have to do anything else. If I get this right, I may be able just to answer the question and move on. Take my calculator again. 1,000 divide by 48, 2083. Thank you very much. Right? There's only one that tells me that that's 2083 is my new conversion price, which I think is kind of nice because, oh my God, what a bunch of math. Now, to answer that second part of the question, please note I didn't need to because I already got the answer, right? Because there's only one answer that offers me 2083 as the new conversion price. All right. But now if I want to figure out the rest of this, I pointed on the real test. Why? I mean, why burn up brain cells unnecessarily? But since this is a coaching call, we'll go the rest of the way. Okay, so now let's go back and try and solve the second part. So I bought 20 bonds for 970. I'm going to put that over here. The bonds are convertible into 40 shares of the common. However, 3 years later after the purchase, there's a 20% stock dividend when it was trading at 105. Who cares? 6 months later, the investor decides to convert when the bonds were 104. Who cares? That doesn't matter. What we need to now do now is I can either do this per share, I can do it in one fell swoop, whatever I'd like to do, right? I like to do things per share to keep some numbers smaller and then do the last part last. So, parity means equal. So if we bought this convertible bond for $970 per bond, and we can turn each of the bonds into 48 shares of the stock. So now I'm taking the current market price of the convertible, I'm dividing by the number of shares it's convertible into, and I find out that I'd be paying for the stock 2021. So that's going to be what we call my cost basis. My cost basis is 2021. You see how I got the 2121? That's turning the bonds into the stock. By the way, it's not taxable to convert. So I don't know taxes based on converting, but it did say that I sold the stock, right? And so it says I sold the stock. Let's see, 6 months later, investor converts the bonds, which were trading at 104, and sells the common shares, which are trading at parity. So now I got to figure out what is parity so I can figure out what I sold the things for. So parity would be taking the 970, 48 shares, 2021, and I originally paid the stock here, right? So we are going to take 24.25. How do we get that? We take the current market price of the convertible and we find out, right? The conversion price is based on par. We got the 2083 already. The market value is going to be 1,040, right? Because it's trading at 104. And we're going to do that math again called parity. We're going to divide by the 48 shares. And this is going to be our sales proceeds. So 1,040 divide by 48. I get 2167, and that is our sales proceeds. I'll put that in green. Boom. And so now I have my sales proceeds minus my cost basis. And it looks like I made some money. It looks like I'm a happy camper here, right? If I take those two numbers, 2167 minus 2021, it looks like I made $1.46 per share. Put that in green. Okay, so now the last thing I got to do is now figure out what that total is, right? So I got to figure out how many shares that is. And remember, there were 20 bonds here, right? So we're going to make a 48 shares per bond. So 48 shares per bond times the 20 bonds. And that's going to tell me how much stock I actually got. And that number is, I'll go back and do this again with you, times 20 bonds. That's 960 shares. So I made $1.46 on 960 shares. And hopefully that is one of the answers. Let's see, 1.46 times 960. I get 140.16 or $1,401.06. Yeah, close enough. We always pick whatever the rounding is what made the difference there. But it's going to be long term. Now, the reason it's long term is because we were risked for more than a year. All right, let's review. This one had a lot going on. Do you have any practice test scores yet?
I do.
And what was your last practice test score?
The last one was 67,
Okay.
41%.
So, a question like this, the reason I ask is a question like this, you might want to just say, you know what, this is a lot of work for one point. I think I'm going to just assign this one to the universe and guess B. But there's a lot of work involved in this question.
Yeah.
Now, you're definitely going to have to calculate parity at least once or twice.
Yeah.
But I don't think it'll be this convoluted. I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to basically be something like a bond is convertible into 25 shares. The current market price is what is parity? They're just point blank going to ask you. But let's review. An investor purchased 20 XYZ 6% convertible debentures for 97, 90% of par, 970. This is just a buffet. Take what you like, leave what you want. I'm not going to deal with the 20 bonds till the very end. So whether it's option, I got 10 contracts or 5 contracts, or whether it's a bond and I got 30 or 40 of them, I think it's easier to work with a smaller number. So I could proceed by going through either per share or one bond. And then at the very end, when I'm all done, deal with how many bonds are in the question. Otherwise, you're going to have to be multiplying all the way through this question. That means there's going to be all kinds of zeros floating around. And
Mhm.
I just think that's a mess personally. First thing, though, here is to know that the trust indenture, that's testable. The trust indenture is a contract between the issuer and the trustee for benefit of bondholders. And in the covenants or promises in a convertible, there's an anti-dilutive clause. And what that says is that if the issuer declares a stock split or pays a stock dividend, their convertibles will be adjusted accordingly. And so here, under the anti-dilution clause, if the company declares a 20% stock dividend, they're going to have to adjust the convertibles accordingly. The other thing I think that makes this question difficult is usually they give you the conversion price and make you establish the conversion ratio. Here, they're doing it kind of ass backwards. They're giving you the ratio and making you reverse engineer the conversion price, which is kind of stupid. The conversion price when it was issued was 25, right? 1,000 divided by 40. So first thing we do is we say, okay, I want 20% more. So it was 40 shares. I'm going to want 20% more. So I want 8 more shares in my conversion ratio. So I want a total of 48 shares now. And now I'm going to establish the conversion price, 28.3. Now remember, that means we're kind of done on this question,
Mhm.
right? Because we can, okay, but then we said, because this is a coaching call, we're trying to, answer all the questions. Let's see if we can get that 1,400. So the next thing I do is I say, okay, I got that. 970 divided by 48 shares means my cost basis, parity, if I convert, is $20.21. I say, Z, if we pay 970 for this bond and we convert, we'd be paying $20.21 for each of the shares. Is that good news or bad news? I say, I don't know. It depends how it all plays out. Because that's old news. I mean, let's just we label that would be what was called the original cost basis, right? And now it says in the question, when the bond was 105, who cares? That's part of the challenge is trying to figure out what things are meaningful, what things are not. 6 months later, you convert. Now it's not taxable to convert. I owe no taxes if I convert. I owe the taxes if I sell the shares. So you call me 6 months later, say, Dean, let's convert this into the stock. I say, okay. Right now, the bonds are trading at 104. And you said, well, does that really matter? I said, only in Series 7 fantasy land Z does that matter. In the real world, this would never be a conversation. Now, good news, Z, when you pass Series 7 fantasy land, you get to leave. I'm stuck here permanently. No wonder I'm demented. I never get to leave. In other words, there's no situation in which I'm going to have this conversation with a customer. I'm simply going to say, we bought the stock at 2021, we sold it at X, and you owe taxes on the difference. End of story. But because this is a Series 7 practice question, they make you work for the current market price of the stock. Rather than just telling it what it is, they make us solve for it. I say, okay, bastards. I'm joking, but if that's the way you want to play it. 1,040 divided by 48. So they're telling me now that the current market price is 2167 because that is parity. The way we get parity is we take the current market price of the convertible, 1,040, we divide by the number of shares, 2160 was 7. So this question, man, what jerks. I had to calculate parity twice. I had to calculate parity when I, figure out what parity is for me when I pay 970, and then what is the stock at if it's at parity. In the real world, that wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be at parity, but it is what it is. Okay, so now I've calculated parity, and now I've got my cost basis and I have my sales proceeds. My cost basis, that's a fancy word, but all that means, Z, is when you turn your money into the investment. That's what cost basis is. I say, what's your cost basis? That's simply when I turn the money into the investment. And then sales proceeds is just when you turn the investment back into money. Right? Because that's eventually what we do. So here I'm a happy camper. I'm a happy camper because I converted at a cost basis of 2021 and I have a sales proceeds of 2167. So I made $1.46 per share. Now I have to deal with it. There's 20 bonds. So 20 bonds that each are converted into 48 shares means I got 960 shares when I turn these bonds into the stock, right? And now I say, okay, well, I made $1.46 on 960 shares, and that is the long-term capital gain of 1,400. By the way, we should have been able to know, eliminate B and D, right? We could have got to a 50-50 because we should know that again, when we're at risk for more than a year, that we have a long-term gain or loss, right? And here it says, however, 3 years after the purchase. So that's where I know it's long-term. A lot of work. Now, what'd you do when you encountered this? Did you just guess being a sign of the universe, or you said, I'm going to ask Dean about it? What'd you end up doing on this one?
I tried to calculate, but I don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
So,
And then I would
um,
tell you too, whenever Kaplan has to give you like a two-paragraph explanation, it's probably on them, not you, right? So, it obviously must have been complicated if they have to, spend that much time. All right,
I
let's
got
go check out our next one here.
okay.
Is your tutor? I'm not worried at all that, you struggle with that. And I don't think it will cause you to have any kind of a blowback on your test. The test question is, can you calculate parity?
Okay.
Right? And it is going to be a little more straightforward. If you put parity into the channel search bar, all kinds of practice questions will come up on how to do that. All right, let's look at our second one here. An investor purchased 100 shares of RA common stock at 150 on June 17th, 2019. Now, as a test taker, the minute they give me the date of the transaction, I immediately start thinking, okay, that date has got probably something to do with the question. I'm thinking, first thing I do, this is this test taker, it's a buffet again. I like just in my mind go June 17th, 2020. So the reason I'm doing that in my mind is I say wherever this time clock goes, if it's past June 17th of 2020, it's going to be long term. Maybe that's not where the question goes, but that's what I'm thinking, right? So here on July 11th, 2000, okay, so July 11th, 2020. Uh, ooh, now good news for us. So I'm your broker. You say, Dean, it's been a good ride. I've made some money and I'm interested in hedging. I'm interested in protection. I want to buy some insurance on my stock position. I said, man, Z, that is a wonderful thing to do. Now, Z, as you know, insurance costs money. Insurance costs money. You have to pay a premium for insurance, right? So now you've established the choice to sell at 180. That's pretty bueno, right? You should know that when you buy a put, right? That's a choice to sell at 165. Stock you bought at 150. Woohoo, right? So I say, Z, there's no way you can lose money now because anytime you want, you can exercise your put and you got a guaranteed profit because you paid 150 and you can sell anytime you want at 165. And I say if it's 165 or higher at expiration, the puts are going to expire. Right? At expiration, if an option contract has no intrinsic value, it expires worthless. So RIK is selling at 145. Woo! Aren't you glad you have a choice to sell at 165? You're not going to sell at 145. You're going to exercise your put. Now, there's lots of ways to do options. And the way Dean likes to do options is I like to make a T and I like to track the money. Does that look familiar?
Yep.
And so I like to say, okay, I call this my setup. I say, okay, I bought the stock at 150. Boom, dollars out, debit, minus sign, whatever works for you. And then I bought the protection for two and a half. All right, boom. And then it says it's selling at 145. Now, this is the challenge on this one. And again, as your tutor, I'm not worried at all that you're struggling with this. I think the language here can be challenging. If you don't recognize that you're going to exercise the put, you're not going to be able to close this out. And so you should know that if you are long a put and you exercise, you call Dean and say, exercise my put. That means you're going to sell the stock at 165. And boy, that sounds like you're happy, right?
Mhm.
And so now, how happy are you? Well, we say, okay, let me just now total this up. And we've got a total of 152 and a half out. And we've got a total of 165 in. And so the difference, again, this is how Dean does it. I do it on a per share basis. And then remember, there's a one contract here, right? So that times 100. So 165 is my sales proceeds minus 152 and a half is 12 and a half times 100, 1250. Do you recall what you tried to do on this one?
Yes. So I chose the short-term capital gain because in the book it says that if you buy a put,
No,
the
but
timing
the
starts over.
only reason you missed it, that would be true if you bought the put before you were at risk for less than a year.
Oh,
If
God.
you did this 6 months out, it would be a problem. But remember, so the only reason you missed this one is because remember, we had to recognize here it says July 11th, 2020. So you can't interrupt your holding period now because you've already been at risk for more than a year. So now there's no problem.
Okay.
You're not going to interrupt. The only time that would be true of the book, if you read it again, which you're going to, and I'm pleased because I get so upset when people don't read the book. They say, do I have to read the book? Yes, you got to read the book. They ask me 50 times, do I have to read the book? I go, I've told you 50 times, you got to read the book. When I get weak, Z, sometimes I get weak. And people say, do I have to read the book? And I go, oh, okay, you wore me out. You don't have to read margin, partnerships, and balance sheets. I would prefer you do, but those aren't target rich environments, right? But all righty. Those are really some hellacious ones. You got anything else?
I do. If you have the time, I
Sure,
have.
absolutely. What do you got? What's the next one?
All right. This one, chat. This is a municipality tax question.
Okay, so what's the QID?
It's put it in the chat too, one five five
Oh,
eight
okay, well,
two three seven.
that's easier. I got it. I think that's the easier way to proceed is copy that, put that here. Come on, Nadine. What's going on? Paste. Here we go. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Even after reading the explanation, I didn't
Okay.
understand.
Well, yeah. Well, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know. But let me give you my version. I'm sure you in a coaching call don't want me reading you the rationale because if that was the case, you would have not wanted to go over it. So I like what this is testing, and I'm not sure I like the phraseology. But here's the test point. The only component of a muni bond that is tax-free is the coupon. So the only part of this that's going to be tax-free to you is the $60 in annual interest you're collecting. So that's the first part of the question. So I know you're getting at least 6%, at least six, because now the second part of this question, which is kind of difficult, is to say, okay, the secondary market on a 7% basis. So if we have a basis, that's the fancy word for yield to maturity. If we have a yield to maturity that's greater than the coupon, that means we bought this bond at a discount. We bought it at less than par, right? How did we determine that we bought this at a discount? Because it says that the basis, the yield to maturity, is greater than the coupon, right? We have the nominal yield here of 6, nominal yield, coupon, fixed or stated rate of return, whatever you want to think of that as. And then we have a yield to maturity here, basis of 7. And so that means it's a bond at a discount. Now, that means you're going to make money by holding this bond to maturity. Because remember, you're paying a discount. And at maturity, at redemption, you're getting par. So that's another source of money you're going to make. And that part is taxable. So the 7% is not all going to be tax free, just a portion of the 7% yield to maturity. The portion that's tax free is the 6. So this part is taxable. So that means you're going to make somewhere between 6 and 7 because that part of the bond is taxable. Now, I think this is a kind of convoluted way to the test point takeaway for your test is the only component to a muni bond that is tax free is the coupon. If you buy a muni bond at a discount and sell it at higher than what you paid for it, you owe taxes, right? So I'd say, hey, Z, if we buy this 6% muni at a discount and you hold it to maturity, you're going to make 7. And you say, boy, 7% tax free. I go, no, 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 Z. You make 6% tax free, then you give us a little something in price appreciation. Do you remember it? Is this another one you just assigned it to the universe or?
This one, what did I got? What did I answer? think I answered 7%, but I'm
Okay, well now you know, right? So the
now I
takeaway.
know now.
All right, any more?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
This one
Did you put it in the chat or?
just did. This one,
Okay, let me get it
this
there. Boom. Let me get my copy and paste feature going here. Boom, copy. Uh, boom, paste. Okay, boom. Does that look like it?
Yes. So just this is just a question on what does it really mean of measurement of the marketability of new municipal geo bond?
Yeah. So, yeah, this is a convoluted one. So, I don't think you would see this question, but the test question I want to share with you is that A, C, and D are found in the bond buyer. The bond buyer test question is a newspaper widely read in the municipal market.
You say A and
Yeah, A, C, and D are all found in what's called the bond buyer. The most important thing on your test that is found in the bond buyer is a notice of sale, where the issuer says, "Attention, attention, investment bankers, we're looking to sell some bonds." And based on that notice of sale found in the bond buyer, various syndicates will be formed. These indexes that we see here, the RevDex, the placement ratio, and visible supply, are about what's happening in the municipal market. right? So the RevDex is an index of 25 revenue bonds with 30-year maturities, and marketability would mean, is that price going up or down? So I don't worry about this question at all. The placement ratio, it says all the following are new municipal bonds except. RevDex is just about the secondary market. I don't worry about this at all. The placement ratio is bonds sold by bonds offered. That's the placement ratio, and that is the primary market. Of all the muni bonds we tried to sell, how many do we sell? So, Z, if I told you the placement ratio is 80%, that means we sold 80% of the brand new bonds. Uh, what happened to the 20% of the bonds we didn't sell? Do they go to bond heaven? Are they up there with the puppies? No, they go into inventory. Attention brokers, blue light special, right? Now, if
Mm.
we were looking at the placement ratio and it was 80% and now it's 90%, that would mean the municipal market's getting stronger. We're not having to take as many bonds into inventory. And if it was 90 and it goes to 80, then that means it's getting weaker, right? That's what these are, again, indicators of the health of the primary market, except A. The visible supply is brand new municipal bonds coming to the market in the next 30 days. The visible supply. And if we see the visible supply rising, that means, wow, we think there's going to be more bonds. Prices are going to be lower because there's more of them. If the visible supply is contracting, right? How many of these things exist? Right. No, Z, I just moved here recently off grid. And, I got tired of begging people to buy one of my leftover sports cars. I got a lot of cars in my career, and I call it a Bumblebee. It's the first yellow MR2 Spider that ever came off the boat from Japan 24 years ago. And it's in pristine condition. And when I bought it, the visible supply was 10 of them. As a guy who has one, I like that. Right? Because I don't even know if there's one like mine. In fact, I tease my brother, I might start going to these historical car club things. Say, hey, I got a car I bet you'd never seen before. So if there's a lot of visible supply, well, that means they're going to be very liquid.
Oh.
I needed a truck for my off-grid location, Z, and I bought a Ford F-150. There's lots of those around. And one of the reasons I bought it in a Ford F-150 is because there's lots of them around. If I need to fix it, there's probably parts available. My brother said, why didn't you buy one of those Tesla Cyber trucks? I go, are you crazy? When I take that into some mechanic here off grid, he's going to look at me and he's going to say, what in the heck is that? I said, well, you'd be surprised. People think like this thing. Not me, but so. All right, you got another one?
Yep. Another
Okay.
one I have
Let me
is
clean up this one. Did you put it in the chat?
not yet. 1 second.
555825. So let's copy that.
So there's two questions. The first one is occurred in interest question, and
What
the
happened?
second
Yeah, what
one
happened
is
here? Did I get it? Is that it?
yes.
Okay. If an M and N, so first thing we need to know is that means March, May, and November,
Yep.
right? And it pays on the verse. So M and N, it could have been M and N 15, it could have been J and J. It's issued at par with a 6% coupon. So $60 annual interest. It's later purchased in August at 97. So you paid 970 for the bond. And this is the test point, the buyer had to pay the seller the dollar amount of the accrued interest was a 16. So the person you gave that to owes taxes on the 16, not you, because you didn't get the 16, because you're going to get on November 1st, or excuse me, November 1st, you're getting $60. But Z is your broker. I say, yeah, but Z, the $60, you don't owe taxes on all of it, right? Because you gave 16 to the guy who you sold the bond from. So the trick on this one, I kind of like this one. It's kind of tricky. But here we take 1,000 times 6%, and that means this bond is paying $60 semi-annually. And so that means each of these payments is going to be $30. And so when you bought the bond, you paid 970, and you, the buyer, have to pay the person who sold it to you. I say, Z, On November 1st, you're getting a check for $30, and not all of that $30 belongs to you. 14 of that dollar, 16 of those dollars belong to me. And you say, well, Dean, when I get the check, I'll send you your pro rata share. I say, no, no, no. This is not a relationship. It's a transaction. So now you pay that. And I tell you as your broker, I say, well, remember, of the $30 that just hit your brokerage account, Z, you had given $16 to the person who sold you the bond. And so you don't owe taxes on that money. You owe taxes on how much of the $30 actually was yours, which is $14. All right. So that's another real tough one. I think it's mainly recognition. Do you know that buyers of bonds pay sellers of bonds the dollar amount of the accrued interest calculated from last interest payment date up to, but not including settlement date? I would know that some bonds trade flat, no calculation of accrued interest, zero coupon bonds, for example, income or adjustment bonds, for example, um, bonds in default, for example. Right. So those are some things I would know. It's mostly recognition. All right. Got another one?
Yep, it's in the chat. Similar.
All right. Let me get rid of this one. Clean up my do chat.
This is a zero coupon question.
Okay. Let's get it in here. An investor purchased a zero coupon bond at 520. So you should know that you must do straight line amortization upward when you buy a zero coupon bond. So here you paid 520. Remember, that is your cost basis. And as I just said, you have to do straight line amortization upward. That's called accretion. And you're going to get back at maturity $1,000. And so what you'd like to tell the IRS is that that's a long-term capital gain. And the IRS says, no, 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 no. You know that you're making 480 over the life of the bond. So that's the first point. Where did Dean get 480? That's the difference between the cost basis for 520 and the 1,000. And you have to do this each year. So it says it matures in 12 years. So I need to figure out how much you're going to pay taxes on. This kind of sucks, by the way, because you're paying taxes on money you're not actually receiving. And so each year I tell you that on your tax return, you're going to owe taxes on 480 divided by 12, $40. Right? So at the end of the first year, you're going to say your adjusted cost base is 560, 600, 640, 680, so on and so forth. If you hold it to maturity, you'd have no gain or loss. So now it says 10 years. So I say, okay, if I have been accreting, adjusting my cost base each year $40, and I've had it for 10 years, I should have already accreted $400. Right? Does that make sense there?
Yep.
So that means my adjusted cost base is 920. And as I said, that's kind of suck because you pay taxes here on $400 you haven't actually received. And now it says you sold it for 945. And again, that's called sales proceeds. So I think you're a happy camper, right? You made $25, right? And so let's see how long we had it. We had it for 10 years, so it's certainly long term, right?
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Any more? One
Oh,
more.
there's one more. Perfect. This is the last one I have.
Okay, I like it. I like it.
This one, it's a option stock split. So I haven't seen a whole lot of these
Yeah,
type
the
of
only reason you haven't
questions.
seen it is because it's a waste of your time. I mean, you're just not going to see it. I mean, so far I haven't said this yet. All these questions I thought were pretty difficult, but I didn't haven't said, hey, that don't worry about it. Right. This is the first time I've said, hey, don't worry about it because it's just not something you're gonna have to deal with. The key to these, and we'll see if what I'm telling you will work, the trick, is to know that your cash equal to the aggregate exercise price never changes. So let me just see if that ends up working on this one or not as a trick. Kind of like with adjusting your cost base for stock splits and stock dividends. You know what I mean by that is you can almost get those right by just knowing I have more shares at a lower price. Your client's option position has been adjusted due to a 2-for-1 stock split. So this is an even split. So now you're going to have twice as many contracts. If you had one, you now have two. And if it was a strike price of 40, it's now 20. So that's called the multiplier. The multiplier is still 100, right? So now you got two contracts and you can exercise into 200 shares instead of 100. A is correct. If it was an odd split, then we change the multiplier. We don't give you more contracts. We just say they're exercisable into more stock. And I wouldn't worry about this at all, right? So this one I just don't think is a question problem. Okay, one more thing I want to show you before we call it a day, because you happen to be a young lady, a paid student. And so you are, I guess you're just very lucky. So this is what you won as a result of the drawing on Tuesday night. And anybody can win a coaching call like you. But only paid students have access to other things,
Ooh.
right? And this is the other things that I guess we were confused about that I want to show you. So come on, baby, load up, load up. So as you recall, when you signed up on the booking page for tutoring, you would hit this thing for 1 hour or 2 hours or whatever. And then, you did an opening purchase of a tutoring session with Dean. But if you go here to that's tutoring, if you go to services and you go to classes, there are some other things that are free. And this is what we did today, your free coaching call for drawing winners. So anybody who wins, they go there and they book the coaching call, and anybody can get that. You don't have to spend any money. The other thing that you're entitled to is paid office hours. And that's the one you missed last week. I didn't know what happened to some of the confusion. So let's see, do I have any office hours posted on the schedule? There's a Q&A. It looks like I need to post a office hour, but that was the one you had last week. And that too is free. And that's only for paid students. And I'll put that up right now. Let me just create that. What works for you next week as a paid office hour?
I have I have the whole week off, so I'm available anytime on your
Oh,
phone.
okay. So let's make it Thursday. See, I'm going to look at that, creating it just for you. If you're watching the video replay, this is only for Z. Nobody else gets to tell me when they're going to come see me. I get to tell you. But all right, so there you go. Now you need to go register for this.
Okay.
You go back on the booking page. This will now be there and it'll be available. And I'm going to make it 4 o'clock. There you go. And now that's going to be on the schedule. And that's only for people like you that are paid. Now, the other thing that you can see here is we also, oh, there's one. The other one we have is the Q&A jam session. As you see here, we have one of those coming up on the 2nd, and you don't have to pay for that either. So we go back to services and we look at that. That also is free. So those are the free things you have available to you. Okay, anything else for today?
4 p.m. Mountain time or
Yeah, my time. Yeah, Arizona, not Mountain Time, Arizona time. Arizona is funky, Z. We don't change.
okay.
Right now it's
Arizona
Pacific
time.
time. Last week it was Mountain Time. Now it's Pacific time. Confusing. I just tell people Arizona time. Figure it out. But if you go to the
Arizona
booking
time.
page, you just hit that and it'll give you the link like it does for tutoring.
Okay, Thursday.
All right.
Okay,
Anything else? That's it. Good. I think
that's
all your
it.
questions are pretty good. I wouldn't worry about that last one, but the other ones are pretty good. So
Okay, good. Thank
accomplish.
you.
Now remember, the real test has a balance of easy and difficult questions.
Okay.
And usually when people are doing coaching calls like yourself, they don't want to go over the easy ones. They want to go over the more
Mm.
difficult ones. And so,
Yeah.
don't give yourself some grace. Those were tough. That convertible question. Oh my God, that had like
I know
two,
that
three,
was
four things
exhausting.
on it, right? Okay, you have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll see you for that office hour next week.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
my
Bye-bye.
pleasure.